We welcome you to this special edition of the Phil Taylor Jones Show. Today we're going to be talking about a case that has been in the headlines for a better part of 10 years or more. It's a story that was inspired by a good friend of ours, Landon Hurt, and we want to give a big shout out to him. And thank you, Landon, for throwing this our way because it's a story that needs to be revisited and revisited again. I'm Phil Taylor Jones, your host, and let's jump into this very sad and infuriating story right now. The story comes to us from Manitowoc, Manitowoc, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Wisconsin. It's a little county of about 80,000 people along Lake Michigan. And therein is the Avery family, which is, from all accounts, a pretty big family. They own a wrecking, towing, and salvage yard. Oh, good Lord, it's huge. It's about, I guess, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 acres of land there with lots of cars and, everything you find at a wrecking yard. Several garages and work areas where they dismantle cars and take the parts out, and they have a storage place for those, and old tires and, just the stuff that you would find at a salvage yard. Well, the story revolves around Steven, and what happened was he was held up in Wisconsin as a symbol of everything wrong with the justice system, having served 18 years in prison for a sexual assault that DNA evidence. I'm getting really mad about this. When we break this down to you, it's devastating. Served 18 years in prison for sexual assault that DNA evidence later linked to a different man. 18 years of this guy's life he spent in prison. After Mr. Avery was released in the sexual assault, and he was pursuing a $36 million lawsuit against the county officials who had wrongly sent him to prison, he was then charged in the murder of Teresa Halbach, a 25-year-old photographer who had come to take pictures at his family's auto salvage yard for an Auto Trader magazine. Now, let me just set this up. First of all, let me just say it is a new series on Netflix, and it's called Making a Murderer. And very powerful series, very well put together. And Landon, our friend, turned us on to it, and boy, I'm glad he did. So let's set this up. You got a young man who had somewhat of a slightly checkered past. He was young and he got into some little scrapes, some with the law, nothing too bad, and his mother and father always said no matter what it was or how bad he thought it was, he would come to them and say, yeah, they're saying I did that, Mom, Dad, I did it. I'm going to be honest, I did it. Every turn, no matter how bad they thought it was or how bad he thought it was, he owned up to it. But this time, he did not own up to it because he didn't do it. It would seem that within this big family, they had some problems. Every family has its air of dysfunctionalness. And there would seem that there was a problem with a cousin of his, a female cousin, who was going around maligning him, defaming his character, just, being a real dirtbag to the guy, and saying really horrible things, that he would go out in public and he would, satisfy himself on the hood of his car, that he would go around chasing various women and they would, get busy out in public and all these kind of things, and they weren't true. So I guess the guy had all he could take from this cousin, meaning Steve Avery. So he ran her off the road one day. They were driving down the road and he ran her off in a ditch. And then he got out of his vehicle and he pointed an unloaded gun at her and said, "Look, you better stop this stuff. You know, you're hurting me, you're hurting our family, and, you know, just stop. We don't need this." Gets back in his car and drives off. Well, she goes home and tells her sheriff's department husband about it, and he vowed then to get Steven. And that's how this whole thing started. They subsequently arrested Steven, gave him not even his customary phone call. They proceeded to lock him away in solitary, which is, you know, not something that you do. He didn't even have an attorney present. Then they put the guy away. Now, in the midst of all this, they found out that there was another guy that looked kind of similar to Steve with the beard and what have you. But from what I've seen of this other guy, he was very tall. Steven's short guy. Looks like he might have been about 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", somewhere in there. This other guy was tall. On this alleged girl that was raped, there was no DNA from Steven Avery. None. Yet the prosecutors and the police, the sheriff's department, they all arrested this guy, sent him up the river, knowing that he was innocent. Why? Because this sheriff husband of his cousin wanted to make sure that she got vindicated. 18 years Steve sat in prison until some people got together, some agencies that wanted to look over innocent people who were raked over the coals, got a hold of his case and start working on it. They worked on it incessantly until they got the guy freed. Okay, now Steven Avery comes home after serving those 18 years. And as was stated before, he pursued, a lawsuit against these officials. Now, they were going for $36 million. Didn't get that. However, they got $400,000 or so. And they gave it to him under the, guise that, hey, just because we're giving you this money does not mean that we accept blame or responsibility, or that we're saying that we're sorry that this happened, because at the time we felt that you were the best criminal that fit this case, and that's why we did what we did. We're not assuming anything. Here's your $400,000. But here's the rub. They were not done with it, meaning the officials of Manitowoc, Wisconsin. They had anger in their hearts. They had larceny in their hearts, because when Teresa Hallback, a 25-year-old photographer, went missing, they did not want to check out former boyfriends, former romantic lovers, or anybody that was from her past. They made a beeline for whom? Steven Avery. They went to his home, and some interesting things took place. Now, before we go into his home, let's backtrack. There were two officers that basically had to give depositions in this lawsuit. One of them was Link, and the other one, his name escapes me, Colbert, something like that. These two basically, gave the deposition, but they couldn't have hands on the searching by themselves. So they sent it out to another police agency in another county. They had to come and, in essence, kind of watch them as they did their search of the premises. Several searches had gone on of Steve Avery's trailer. But it's a funny thing, when these other officers from, oh good Lord, the name was right on the tip of my tongue, because Illinois has a division of the same name. It'll come to me later, but these officers that were in this other jurisdiction weren't there. Now, Teresa, the girl that was killed, she had a bluish, greenish RAV4 Toyota. So, guess what was found in Steve Avery's trailer? The key to a Toyota. Next thing you know, here comes Teresa's aunt. She went out there because God pointed her in the direction. And so she was walking around the Avery salvage yard, and then she walked up this little hill, like where there was about 4, 5, 6 cars up there, and she saw this one car, and something stood out to her. That this RAV4 that she saw had boards and a hood of a car and some tires around it and some trees and branches. And she looked, and she went to the back of the car, and she saw RAV4. Oh, and her heart dropped. Then she went back and called and said that she thinks she has found something that they need to come and see. And this Link guy automatically knew that it was a 99 Toyota. Now, you know, how would he know all of this stuff unless it was pre-planned? From every step of the way, and I don't want to totally give it away, because I would like for you to, you know, if you have Netflix, I'd like for you to actually view this for yourself and come to your own conclusion. I'll give you a few little tidy tidbits, but you need to view it for yourself at the heinous things that went on to just get revenge on this Steven Avery fellow. So after that, went down, they found the key. They even found blood stains in the RAV4. Now, when Avery was taken to jail, he had a big cut on his finger. And he was supposedly wearing gloves. Now, if you're wearing gloves with a cut on your finger, how could you get blood on the car or in the car? And if you weren't wearing gloves and your finger's bleeding, then there would be prints and smudges all over the car. No, these little blood smears were just placed in various places. Then they later found out, his attorneys found out, that there had been some evidence taken, some of his blood, when he was in prison. And it was supposed to have been in a sealed package. And then that package was supposed to be put within another sealed package. So there was no tampering. But what the attorneys found out, that there was tampering big time. Both packages, the seals were broken. The vial of blood that was within that package had a hole in it about the size of a hypodermic needle. You see where I'm going with this? The people who set up Mr. Avery took a hypodermic, popped it in there, got out some blood, and then they could splatter it everywhere to make this guy look guilty as sin. Now, poor Mr. Avery's back in jail. That's not good enough. No, they not only want to stick the knife in his back, but they want to twist it. And I think this is probably the most heinous of all. They went to his 16-year-old nephew, Brendan. Let me see, Brendan Dassey, 16 years old at the time of Teresa's death. And frame him as well. Now, Brendan is a student, very good student, but he's kind of, slow learned. He might be what you call EH, an EH student. He had some special ed classes, but he was basically in the mainstream, but he was definitely EH. educationally handicapped. This kid, never been in trouble in his life, good student at school, teachers, principals, counselors love him. He has his little friends, had a girlfriend, but, he wasn't the athletic type, and, he kind of sat around. He liked to play video games. He often spoke of his PlayStation and his Nintendo. And he began to get a little punchy, a little fat around the middle. So at school, you know how kids can be. They can be kind of mean. So they start calling him fat. And subsequently, for whatever reason, possibly because of the weight gain, his girlfriend dropped him. This is his first girlfriend now. First girlfriend. Because, he's kind of slow and he doesn't, not to impugn the guy or be mean or anything, but he's not Justin Bieber or, some of these little hotsy-totsy boy toys that girls would go after today. So, obviously, he got enthralled with the girl and he really liked her. And when she broke up with him, it hurt him. So what did he do? He tried to lose weight. So he dropped, by his estimation, about 5 to 10, maybe 15 pounds. To a cousin of his, he dropped about 40. He began to burst into tears for no reason. Well, I don't know about, how these crazy jurists and things feel about it, but when you're in a love situation and it doesn't go right, it can be a very hurting thing. And that's to us as adults. Can you imagine a 16-year-old kid, his first little interest, and, he loses her, and he's crying. He's crying while they're at the dance, some kind of little school function. He was sitting out in the hall crying because obviously maybe he wanted to be with her in this little function. He's seeing all his friends with their girlfriends and what have you. He's sad. These cops and this prosecuting district attorney by the name of Kenneth, I forgot the creep's name, Kenneth Kratz. They're sneaking around, family members trying to get stuff. So these two officers interrogate this girl. To my understanding, no parents involved, no attorney. And she begins to tell them things that Brendan allegedly said. That he had been with his uncle, Steven, and they had done something, kind of bad. And that's why he was crying. And that's why he was losing weight. And so that's what pushed these people over to Brendan. These two investigators, one Fassbender, and the other one was Grieger or something like that. So they got the boy and took him into interrogation. His mother, Barb, said that she was very insistent about going in with her son. And they told her no, to wait out in an outer room. So Brendan was in there, scared, upset, with these two authoritative figures. No mother, no attorney. And you could see from the interrogation where they were pounding on this kid, getting inside his head and actually twisting what he was going to say into what they wanted to have him say so that they could further use that as a nail, the final nail in Steven Avery's coffin. It was disgusting the way they did this kid. As one of the attorneys put it, when he was moving into their direction, it was like you would do with your little puppy when you're trying to train him. Oh, good puppy, you're doing good, and here's a puppy treat. But when he doesn't do what you want to do, oh, bad puppy, I'm leaving, I'm getting out of here. You're not doing what I want you to do. And they kept that going until they actually got this heinous confession out of the kid, where he actually went over to his uncle's house, went inside the trailer, followed his uncle to the bedroom where young Teresa was bound and shackled to the bed, At which time Uncle Steve told Brendan to, have at it, get with her, rape her. And then they pounded on the girl after which Uncle Steve said, yeah, now that's the way to do it. Then he had Brendan allegedly take a knife and slit the girl's throat. And after she didn't bleed, they took her out in the garage and shot her 10 or more times, then took her out to an open pit behind the Avery garage and set her afire after mutilating her body. And that's how they steered Brendan into thinking, who shot her in the, what happened to her head? And you could see Brendan or hear him saying, I don't know. I pulled her hair, I hit her. What happened? Who shot her in the head? And, they were just leading this little E.H. kid into this confession, if you will, to further bury the uncle. He then was given a lawyer, and this lawyer was nothing more than a dirtbag. On every turn, you could actually see this lawyer smirking and smiling and further trying to coerce even more of a confession out of Brandon. He even had his investigator take Brandon into a room and had him write. Now, Brendan initially wrote the truth, what he had done. He came home, got off the bus, went in, got a little something to eat, played some video games. He talked to his mother. She was going out with a friend of hers. And then he went in and he played some more video games. His brother called him and he helped his brother with something. I think his brother was going to go hunting or something. Oh no, his brother had a duffel bag and he was going to go trick-or-treating because it was around Halloween. And then he talked to his mother on the phone and he went to sleep. No, that's not good enough. That's not what you said. Then they made him write down this whole thing about where he, went in, gave his uncle some mail, and he went on through and did this horrible things to the girl. Then he actually had the child draw pictures of the woman shackled to the bed and what he had done to her and how he went, about how they went about murdering her. So they've got all this like irrefutable evidence from the kid himself. And all the time, this attorney that was supposed to be Brendan's attorney is, having little conversations with whom? None other than Kenneth Kratz, the DA of Manitowoc, Wisconsin. You talk about a miscarriage of justice. I have never seen anything in all my years this bad, and I've seen a lot of bad stuff, but this is terrible. They went on to imprison, or at least put the kid in jail. They had him believing that if he told the truth, if he told them what they wanted to know, he'd go back to school. They pulled him out of school, pulled him out of class. And had him believing he was going to go back and say, oh, well, now since you told us what you told us, that was a really, really bad thing. Now we got to arrest you. I have never seen anything like this before in my life. It was a very powerful documentary. They went on with the trials. After all those two attorneys of Stevens had gone through compiling all this evidence, the judge was a crook. He suppressed much of the evidence. He held a lot of it back from the jury. There were like whole depositions or what have you. Some of it was cut off. Anything that would benefit Steven Avery was squished. With Brendan, they even went to the judge and said, look, this attorney that he has is not working in his best interest and he needs to be removed. The judge denied it, which was a further nail in Brendan's coffin. See, these two creeps, this attorney and his investigator, they were trying to nail Steven, not even caring or understanding that they were getting Brendan in so deep that he was going to obviously go the same way of his uncle. And that's exactly what happened. Terrible, terrible situation. These people, these two people that are innocent, are still in prison. Stephen is now 53 years old. Brendan, remember, started out 16. He's now 24. They even, tried to beseech, "Oh, bastard." And he's like, "No, I can't pardon state cases. I can't do that." The legal system there in Wisconsin leaves much to be desired because the attorneys for each person, for Steve Avery and for Brendan, took the cases to appellate court and then the federal Supreme Court. And they threw it out. The people are still sitting in prison. Later on, this DA, Mr. Kenneth Kratz, was found out to be a sleazeball. He's sexting women. They got him out of office, and it still didn't have any bearing on the two cases that he mauled and mangled and sent innocent people to prison for. So this just goes to prove a lot of things that are going on in this country need to be looked at. Like some of the things in our judicial system that may have worked when it was first written. A lot of things constitutionally may have worked when they were first penned. But now we're like 240 some odd years past when that was written, or when these things were, thought up. Well, it used to be good, Well, I used to be 2 years old. What worked for me when I was 2 doesn't necessarily fit now that I'm 57. So what worked then in the judicial system doesn't necessarily work now, especially when you throw a crooked wrench in there. There are a lot of people in our judicial system. There are a lot of people in our prisons that are innocent, totally innocent, but because of some miscalculation, whether it be an honest miscalculation or a premeditated one, are sitting there on death row, or are sitting there in solitary, or are sitting there in gin pop, not being able to get out because a lot of the wheels and the gears that put them in there won't reverse now. A lot of people have been executed that were totally innocent. We need desperately, and this show brings the point home more than any other thing that I've ever seen, read, experienced, that our judicial system has some major bugs in it. You throw in a sleazeball DA, sheriff's department, police department, a bunch of shyster lawyers, a crooked judge, and that person goes down the river never to be seen again. Making a Murderer, a Netflix exclusive. It's really worth watching. And I think there are some websites or some links to where you can go and sign a petition to help get Steven Avery and his nephew, Brendan Daggett.
There's Darcy.
Oh, wait a minute.
Darcy.
I think I mispronounced his name once again. Brendan Dassey, not Daggett, Dassey. I stand corrected.
We'll have those notes.
Help them get out of this predicament, because it would be sad to have Steven stay in jail another 18 years, but they're saying by the time Brendan gets out, he's going to be 58 years old. So he's going to have spent the better part of his life in there. Check it out and be very safe when, dealing with legal systems, because when you get into them, it's a mess, it's a quagmire, and you may not ever get out. And that's a scary thing, that we've got to be afraid of the people that are supposed to help us. So stay safe out there and try to maintain the air of your happiness. And to Landon, hey buddy, thank you so much for sharing this with us and suggesting that we do a show on it, because I think this is a very powerful subject and hopefully a very powerful show, and gives us a lot to think about. So we thank Landon Hurt for his wonderful insight and sharing this with us.
Yeah.
Stay safe, take care, and we'll see you next time on the Phil Taylor Jones Show. Bye-bye.